Now, if emotion is the key to impact, why is that the case? Why is it so important that we understand how to engage and connect with an audience from an emotional point of view? Well, let's just reflect for a few moments around how the human being processes information. How are you now processing information? And for us to understand that, we just need to briefly understand how the human brain is structured. Now, I recognize, obviously, that the human brain is an immensely complex part of this machine. So I'm going to strip away all the complexity, and I'm going to divide the human brain into 3 parts. Are you familiar with left and right brain thinking? Generally understood. Well, let's imagine that over here is the left brain. That part of the brain that deals with language, with logic, with sequence, with order, with number, with processes, with analysis, with data, with facts and detail. Over here, the right brain. That part of the brain that is more creative. That part of the brain that looks at the big picture. That part of the brain that enables us to appreciate art, appreciate nature, see the whole thing. In the context of business, this part of the brain loves the agenda, because the left brain loves the journey you're going to take it down. But as the agenda is being delivered, usually in the context of business, how? How do we typically show an agenda in a business meeting or business environment? Shout it out. PowerPoint slide, point. Left brain loves that, because the left brain loves the journey you're going to take it down. But as the left brain is enjoying the agenda, the right brain is silently screaming, that's all well and good, but what's in it for me? How am I going to benefit? Where is the value for me? What the right brain is looking for is the big picture. When you're delivering a message very early on, by all means show them an agenda if you wish to, but don't lose sight of the fact that the right brain needs to know the value or the benefit that they're going to get by listening to you. Now, sitting beneath the left and right brains, what we call the thinking brain, sitting beneath the left brain and the right brain, down here, the emotional limbic system. Put simplistically, how we think, how we feel. If I was to give you a physical gesture to describe what I'm just talking about, imagine that this here is your brainstem. The reptilian brain, the most ancient part of the human brain system. Sitting on top of the brainstem, almost like a clenched fist, funnily enough, the emotional limbic brain, enveloped by now what is the largest part of the human brain. Let's simply call it the thinking brain, the left and the right hemispheres of the thinking brain. Now, what is the relevance of this to us as business communicators? Let me ask you this question. How do we as humans take information in? What are you using right now to take information in? How are you taking information in? Yeah, but how? How is it getting into your brain? Exactly. We see it. You're seeing this machine deliver a message. You're hearing the message. The 2 primary senses for most human beings, sight and sound, touch, taste, smell, the 5 senses. Now, if you think of how we've evolved over millions of years, those 5 senses are in effect directly connected to the reptilian brain. It's much more complex than that. But let's strip away, let's keep the complexity out of it. Those 5 senses are in effect directly connected to the reptilian brain. Here's the important part of this. The first intelligence that sensory input meets, in a fraction of a second, the first intelligence is an emotional intelligence. Before, if indeed that sensory input does reach the intellect for processing, for analysis, for debate, for discussion. Now, we're bombarded with thousands of sensory inputs all day long. What, in your judgment, does the emotional brain do with the vast majority of sensory inputs? Say again, sorry? Store them. Well, for the key ones, absolutely yes. But in the main, what the emotional brain does with the vast majority of sensory inputs is to filter them, to delete them. Stores the key ones, stores the important ones. We have this image of the emotional brain, and that is the emotional brain acts as the gatekeeper to the intellect. You have to engage the gatekeeper to gain access into the intellect. And yet, how many messages do you experience in business aimed here at the left brain? Fact after fact after fact after fact after fact. Supported by what? What is the default means today still of business communicators getting messages across to their audience? We saw it earlier with the GDPR session. We've probably seen it throughout the last day and a half. What is still today the way that we get business messages across to an audience? PowerPoint. Now, I have no issue with PowerPoint. No issue at all. I just have an issue with understanding that actually you can't just aim the message here. You have to aim the message here as well. This part of the brain loves story. This part of the brain is engaged by understanding the reason why. But most importantly, this part of the brain has to be engaged. If you only aim the message at the left brain, fact after fact after fact after fact after fact, what can happen? What can the gatekeeper do? The gatekeeper can decide, this is too difficult, this is too hard, I'm struggling to follow this, I can't see the PowerPoint slides. The presenter has just said, as you can see, and you're silently screaming at him or her, well, I can't see. Now, it doesn't take long for that level of frustration to get to the point when the gatekeeper says, hang on a minute, this is becoming too much of a struggle, it's becoming too difficult, let's close the gates. So, critically then, how do we keep the gates open? Well, we keep the gates open by the way that we use our voice, by the energy that we bring to the performance, by the physical side of it, by movement, and by an understanding of critical performance must-dos. Let's look at this. Let's just very briefly think about the voice.